Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Tradesman Experience. This is the podcast built by tradesmen for tradesmen. My name is Josh, and I wanted to revisit one of the questions that was asked in our episode 200. The question that was asked to me was, why did I choose this profession? And I've been thinking a lot about unpacking that question a little bit more and really trying to share why I'm here. I'm going to take you through this, what I think is going to be a quick journey of my past. Now, I will tell you, I have filtered out personal problems. I have filtered out family problems. I have filtered out relationships. And the synopsis that I'm going to give you is really focused around my exposure to the trades and the different types of trades and some of the experiences that I've had. I only want to do that just to kind of lay some groundwork, lay some background as to who I am. And I think that will help me better explain why I'm here. When I was about 3 years old, this is as the story has been told to me. When I was about 3 years old, that was the first time that I drove a nail into a board using a hammer. Back then, parents, you could still work on your own cars. People still worked on their own cars in the garage, and apparently that's where I was at. My dad was in the garage working on the car, and as garage dads do, they find something for their kids to do while they are working. The task at hand for me that day was driving nails into a 2x4. That was the first time that I'm sure unsuccessfully held a hammer and drove a nail into the board, but that really set the pace for the rest of my life. By age 9, so I'm gonna jump through some different age groups here to try to give you some background. But I remember around age 9, begging my stepfather to let me mow the lawn, for him to teach me how to mow the lawn. We lived in a house in town. You push mowed the lawn, and it was around that summer that he taught me how to mow the lawn. Now, I have no idea how small I was. I can tell you that I was abnormally small for my age as I was growing up. So I was always the smallest kid in the class, always the smallest kid in my age group. But if you can imagine a really small 9-year-old trying to hand push a mower around, that's what I learned how to do that summer. And that led into me helping him mow the lawn. That following summer, so now I'm at an old age of 10, I asked the neighbor if I could mow their lawn. And this is one of the few memories that I have. And the reason I told you about my size is it's relevant to this story. I was so small that I couldn't physically push the lawnmower through parts of their lawn because of the type of grass. And I think it's a zoysia grass, and I'm probably mispronouncing that, kind of a popular grass in the Midwest. I was so small, I didn't have the physical strength to push this mower through the entire lawn. So the neighbor, being the kind neighbor that they were, he negotiated with me, and that I would help him mow his lawn instead of mowing the entire lawn. So I mowed this small section that was close to our house, and he mowed the rest, and he would pay me $2 every week that I helped him mow. And I think that was probably my first paying job. At the ripe age of 10 years old, making $2 mowing the lawn. And I didn't do anything else. I didn't weed eat. I didn't use a leaf blower, didn't sweep anything. I just helped him mow the lawn. And It was also around that summer 10 or the summer after around 11 that I helped with my first re-roof. My mother and stepfather were re-roofing their house that we lived in there. And being the ambitious soul that I am, I wanted to help and I wanted to learn. And it was, again, around age 10 or 11 that I was trying to, pack. This was back in when, 3-tab shingles were popular, but packing these bundles of shingles up the ladder, had a nail apron, had my own hammer. And that's how we re-roofed this house, tear off with old spade shovels or old square shovels, and then, re-roofed, laid shingles by hand and nail aprons. By 12, I had gotten more exposure to the construction world because the same house that we had re-roofed, my parents now wanted to do a room addition. My youngest brother was born by then, so there's 3 kids in the house. They wanted to add on, so I was helping bust concrete, frame walls, set rafters, decking, roofing, drywall, siding, all of the fun lessons that come with putting room additions in. And by that time, I had gained a couple more lawns in the neighborhood. Around 14, again, I'm trying to make this as painless as possible, but and just kind of paint you guys a picture. But the summer I graduated 8th grade, still a strapping 5 foot 290 pounds. I went to work for my stepdad. He owned a mechanic shop. Him and another gentleman owned a mechanic shop, and I went to work for them the summer I graduated 8th grade. Went to work for them full time. My stepdad would pick me up from my dad's house if that's where I was staying, and he would take me to work. And my job was to sweep floors, empty trash cans. That was my job. And for me, that summer was really my introduction into the trades, because until that point, the exposure that I had was just with immediate family members. I didn't work with strangers. Everything was just kind of, whatever we did on our own home. But that was the summer that I really got that introduction, really got that exposure to the skilled trades. And it began by sweeping floors and dumping trash cans. I worked there for 6 years. I worked for him and his partner all through high school and a little bit after high school. I started at $5 an hour. So we went from $2 mowing that lawn at $2 to working for $5 an hour, sweeping floors. And I got to learn several things through that 6-year span. One, the longer I was there, the more skill set I gained. Sweeping floors and emptying trash cans turned into changing oil. Changing oil turned into kind of full service, like, your quick lubes or Jiffy lubes that you pull in today. I would do full service on vehicles, rotate tires. That kind of graduated into changing, dismount, mount, and balancing tires. That evolved into driving a flatbed wrecker, not for emergency service. It was just for them. And it's kind of hilarious now because I was 16 or 17 driving this, I think it was a 1985 diesel Chevy rollback. And I would just drive it either to the coal mines, or I would go, pick up cars that were clients of theirs. So I wasn't doing an emergency service, but it's kind of, again, looking back, it's kind of hilarious. This tiny 16, 17-year-old driving this old diesel rollback. I also, because the coal mines, some of the coal mines were still operating at that point, I would ride to the coal mines every morning with my stepdad, and we would pick up vehicles. And I was driving everything back from standard vehicles to F600s, boom trucks, shuttle buses, which are basically school buses that they use in the coal mines, and kind of getting this constant exposure of new things and new experiences. Some of the other lessons that I learned, though, were through hazing. When you're a kid in a shop of grown men, and it's funny because thinking back, I'm pretty sure most of those guys were younger than I am now, but to me, they were all old. They were all old guys. They were all older. They'd been doing this for 100 years. And if you've never been around a mechanic shop, it's similar to a welding shop or a construction site. They just don't take any shit. They're hard knuckled, they're beer drinking, whiskey swilling, tobacco spitting motherfuckers that just work hard. They work in uncomfortable situations. Everything that they're trying to fix, they have to go through 18 different things to get there. But I learned a lot about, I'd have to say I learned a lot about respect from some of the guys that I worked with. This guy named John and his brother Did were two guys that I had a lot of respect for. In that environment, outside of that environment, I don't really know a lot about these guys. A lot of guys came and went. We had different types of the business, but I got hazed a lot being the kid. You get greased, you get taped, you get thrown in the dumpster. It's constant harassment, constant, if you could imagine, again, being a teenage boy, growing up in a shop of full-grown men, the amount of sexual banter, the way that they're going to fuck with you about dating girls and all the shit that they get to say and all the questions and the interrogations that you're going to go through from dating. You learned consequences. I learned about consequences in work when you don't do something right or you lie about, what you did. But I also got to learn kind of what I see now is the developmental stages of culture and what it's really like to have that friendship when you show up. And, during the summer, I would work 50, 60 hours a week at that shop. By that time, after I got my driver's license, I had a dozen lawns that I was taking care of around town. So I had that as a little side hustle. So I was working, again, 40, 50 hours a week at the shop. I was, mowing a dozen lawns. And it was just a really great experience. I wish that more young people, young men specifically, but I really wish that more young people got that exposure at a young age. Am I going to sit here and say that everything that I went through, a child should go through? No, I don't necessarily agree with that, but I'm not going to, I'm not going to disagree with it either, because that was just my upbringing. That was my exposure to the trades. Those were the things that I learned. Another thing that I learned working there was I didn't want to be a mechanic. I was around it enough. It just wasn't for me. It just wasn't attractive for me, and I knew that I didn't want to do that anymore. So, as everyone gets interrogated when you graduate high school, it's what do you want to do when you grow up? What are you going to go to school for? And unfortunately, I kind of fell into that. I forfeited my opportunity to go to the military, which will probably be to this day is my only regret. I don't believe in living with regret. It's the only thing that I wish I would have done differently. But I forfeited my ability to go to the military and started school. When I started school, because I had allowed everyone else to influence what I wanted to do and who I should become, I began school for engineering. Now, I will tell you that lasted maybe a semester, because when I get into algebra, my brain just doesn't work. Graphs, algebra, calculus, it's not for me. I can't do it. I don't care to do it. And when I started doing the math of how long it was going to take me to get just the required math to get an associate's degree, to graduate into a university, to get my bachelor's degree and whatever other level of education I needed, I think I'd fucking still be in school. So it didn't take me long to recognize that was not the path for me. I switched, focused on criminal justice, just mainly to be a game warden. And growing up in the woods and the four-wheelers and hunting like I did, game warden was very appealing. You get to be outside. You work for the forestry groups. You are, it's kind of a paramilitary group. You're a type of law enforcement. I did that for a couple of years. When my brother Matt graduated high school, he decided, through whatever decision or influence, I'm not sure, that he wanted to go into HVAC. So that was the fall of 2001. He wanted to go into HVAC, and I wasn't in love with the idea. I'd kind of gotten bored with the idea of criminal justice. Wasn't really panning out the way that I had hoped. So I joined him and I said, yeah, man, I'll go into HVAC with you and we will have our own business one day. And that was our plan, our goal, our dream when we started our first day at the vocational school in the HVAC program. And we went through the fall, went through the spring. That spring semester, the end of that spring, early summer semester of 2002, we both got an internship or an apprenticeship for a local company, the same company. So we started at the same company the same day. And that was where, for me, that was really the beginning of my HVAC career. It was that fall or that following spring, Matt left the HVAC program and joined the Navy. And side note, that day that he got on the train and left our hometown to Chicago, I should have been on the train. I should have went to the military with him and fulfilled my dream for that. But I felt that I had already committed too much into the HVAC, and so I stuck it out. I worked for that company for 4 years, and when I started for that company, I was making $7 an hour. Now, I jumped a couple years there real quick, but I had worked at, when I left the garage, I went to work for some people that owned an ostrich farm that were building greenhouses on their property to start growing fruits and vegetables. And I worked for them for a couple years, maybe. I think I was making $8 an hour doing that. When I got into HVAC, I had to quit that because I was working full time for them. I went to one factory. It was a boat trailer factory in our hometown. I went there. I was the prep and primer for the boat trailers, and where they went into the paint booths. I left that job, went to another factory working nights for $8.42 an hour. I got a 42-cent raise if you work nights instead of days. And I worked at that factory for 9 months, working nights and going to school full time. And in the spring of 2002, when we got the apprenticeship, that's when I quit working the factory. But I worked at that first place for 4 years. I left there and went to a new construction company as a foreman, as an HVAC foreman. So I was designing, fabricating, installing custom HVAC systems and custom duct systems for custom homes. I worked for them for 3 years. And I'm gonna back up over these just a little bit. But I left them and I went to work for a kind of a larger service company in the HVAC industry. After a 3-month unemployment hiatus, working part-time for an electrician, When I worked at the first place, and this is where some of my frustration really started building. And again, this is all background as to why I'm here. That first company, I started at $7 an hour. And when I left that company 4 years later, I was making 16 and change. 2 years in a row working for that company as a service technician, as an on-call service technician, I had around and a little over 500 hours of overtime 2 years in a row. And with the overtime, I never made more than $36,000 in a year. Now, if you've never lived in the Midwest, I will just tell you that cost of living is quite a bit cheaper. It's a lot cheaper, and wages are a lot less. Do I think that they should be higher? Absolutely. And today, there's some companies that have caught up with the future and with the cost of things. There's some pretty good packages, compensation packages for some of those companies back there. But back then, top technicians were making 18, 19, 20 bucks an hour. If you found a journeyman tech that was making $24, $25 an hour, they were like God. They had fucking 30 years experience. But I went from, 16 and change to the custom home market, the construction company, for I think it was 17 bucks an hour. And I was making 18 or 18.50 3 years later when I left. I had a team of 2. I did have a company truck. I did have a company phone. So there were some benefits on top of the hourly. But I remember when I told them that I wanted to leave, because there was absolutely no opportunity for growth. I was never going to make more than they were deciding to pay me and pay their other foremans. And their other foremans made the same. All the foremans made the same. And I remember he came in the shop one day and, he said, "Are you really going to leave a $40,000 a year job?" First of all, I never made $40,000. I barely broke $38,000, in the 3 years that I worked there. But that was the approach. Is, you're never going to make more money than this, basically. Why would you leave this job? When I left that job, I got recruited by a large service and install company in a nearby town, and they had recruited me, interviewed me to help them grow their company and eventually become service manager. And that's 100% what it ended up being, was a service manager. They were going to pay me 19 bucks an hour. I remember the first time that I made more than 50 grand in a year as a service tech, and it was working for this company. So I had been in the industry almost 9 years before I broke 40 or 50 grand as a service tech. And again, that still weighed on me as I graduated into this service manager position. So we built this company. The gentleman that recruited me, quick caveat, the gentleman that recruited me ended up being my business partner a little bit later in the story. But when I graduated to service manager, they kept my compensation the same, but I was getting less overtime because I wasn't in a truck anymore. We had built a company. We had built this team. We had 2 EFIs. We had 3 or 4 service technicians. We had 2 install crews. We had taken a company that had been around for many decades. It was second generation owner. And in 3 years, we tripled their revenue. And not only tripled their revenue, but we blew their fucking profits out of the water. The owners were making excellent money, more money than they had ever made in their life. And when I went to the table and said, "Hey, I'm making less money," and I'm talking, $400 to $600 a month less as a service manager than as a service technician, their response was just, "You can start selling." And that just didn't set well with me, because for them to justify compensating me more, I'm making less. And for them to compensate me more, they wanted to add on not just more responsibilities, but a whole nother position. I was at that company for 3 years and things started going sideways. And that's what happens, I've noticed, with certain people and money. I had an opportunity to go to work as a territory manager for a geothermal manufacturer, a very popular one in the Midwest. And when I got that job, my salary was $48,000 a year, and I would get salary plus commission, plus travel, plus insurance, plus additional benefits. And it was my target salary, the way that the commission structure was based, was $80,000 plus all of these other perks. And for me, everything that I had created in my mind as to what success was, I had achieved it. This was the job that I had been looking for my whole life. This is the job that was going to allow me to do the things that I wanted to do, afford the lifestyle that I wanted, and I wasn't going to have the stress of paycheck to paycheck anymore. I had arrived. That is truly what I thought. And I went through the interview process, got the job, and I thought that I had arrived. I lasted in that job 18 months, and I wanted to fucking kill myself and almost every contractor that I worked with. I called on about 60 contractors that we did business with, in addition to the whole territory manager process, cold calling, following market, which I didn't know how to do any of that, by the way. I had not done sales. I didn't know any of that. I couldn't even turn on I didn't even know how to create an email. I think I've told that story on here. I didn't even know how to create an email during orientation through Microsoft Outlook. I had no idea what I was doing because I had worked with tools since I was a toddler. I didn't have a computer. I didn't know how to do that stuff. But the 18 months that I spent, the 60 contractors that I called on, only 3 of them knew how to run a business. So every time I would walk into someone's office, I would get vomited on for the first 15 to 30 minutes every fucking time. And they would blame me for their problems. They'd blame the market for their problems. They'd blame other vendors for their problems. They'd bitch and complain because warranty work's not profitable. And they would just fucking berate me with all of their bullshit. And then want to know what I was going to do to solve their problem. I didn't know anything about business back then. I just knew there was something inside me that kept telling me this isn't how this should be. And because I had no leadership at all, I was still immature as a communicator. I was still, a young man at that time. I was 30, 31, when I got that job. And I just didn't know how to handle those situations. I didn't know how to communicate. I didn't know how to ask hard questions. I didn't know how to have those conversations. I didn't know how to hold people accountable. And something really amazing happened. A few months after I got that position, the gentleman that hired me, who was my boss, had come down, said he was going to ride with me for a week. And I figured out in the first day everything that I was doing wrong and everything that I did not know about the job. He was frustrated. I was frustrated. Again, a lot of my frustration came from ego, which come from my immaturity. Excuse me. And it was a very uncomfortable car ride, to say the least. However, at the end of that week, he tossed me an audiobook on CD that he said, you're making good money now. I want to make sure you know how to use it. And the audiobook was Total Money Makeover by Dave Ramsey. As I stated in the beginning, I filtered out a lot of my personal family dynamic and all of that stuff. But one thing I was never taught was finance. I was taught to live paycheck to paycheck. I was taught that if you want to make more money, you just work harder. And that was the simple variable in the equation. And I never had a problem working hard. But I was introduced to something that is brilliantly elementary, but it cracked something open in me. And I became obsessed with figuring out more of what I did not know. What was it that I didn't know? If this audiobook give me information that transformed my life, because I sold things, I snowballed debt, I started putting savings, I got rid of credit cards, I did the things that they talk about in the Total Money Makeover. And through some research, I discovered something called a podcast. Because I was trying to figure out who the fuck Dave Ramsey was, and no idea who he was, never heard of the man before. I stumbled across a podcast that his company had started called Entree Leadership. I had to figure out how on my iPhone 4, that was a company phone, how to listen to a podcast. And I think they had less than 40 episodes when I had discovered them. And I went back to the first one. The very first one, as I can remember to this day, was Simon Sinek, Start With Why. And I had become obsessed with learning like I had never done before. I had always done good in school because of my ability to recall information. It wasn't that I was fucking smarter than anybody. I just had the ability to remember and recall. And if you understand the institutionalized system of our education system, all you got to do is remember and recall, and you can pass everything. To me, it's not that fucking difficult, but it was an easy thing for me to get through. But I never had the desire to learn until I discovered this. I lasted at the territory manager job for 18 months because the more I learned about business, the more I discovered and learned about leadership, the more I discovered and learned about self-development, the more I hated that fucking job. Because now I would go into these businesses with a new lens, very premature lens, but a new lens. And I knew that they were not doing it right. I knew that they were struggling. I knew they were doing things because that's the way they had always done it. And I knew that they had no sense of accountability. They were masters at making excuses and shifting blame. And the more I learned about those things, the more I hated that job. May of 2013, the gentleman that had recruited me for the service business informed me that he had left that company and was going to start his own, and was interested if I wanted to be a part of it. So kind of silent behind the scenes, I helped him start this business, helped him hire the first technician. And November of 13, I quit the territory sales job, and December 2nd of 2013, I stepped into my first business. And I stepped into my first business with some very primitive ideologies. I knew what I didn't want to do, and I knew that I wasn't going to be outworked. And I knew that I was going to learn as much as possible, as fast as possible, to grow myself and grow the team and grow the business. And that was some of the early negotiations that I had with my partner at that time. This is how I want to build this business. This is the culture that I want to create. I was tired of working for assholes. I was tired of feeling undervalued. I was tired of working so fucking hard and not getting any recognition or reward for it. And I did not want that in our company. He was completely on board. So we start building this thing out of some simple ideas, some very primitive principles of business. And it set me on this kind of this rocket fueled path of growth and development. And it's so great when you look back at who you were, 10 years ago. If you look at who you were 10 years ago and you haven't changed much, oh God, you poor bastard, right? You've got to be fucking miserable. Because I look back at who I was, 10 years ago, 10 and a half, almost 11 years ago. And I laugh at the innocent immaturity that I had as a leader, because I was trying to discover all of these new methods of leadership and communication and business, and how are we going to do this? And luckily, I had a very patient team. But I will tell you the truth. I did more things wrong than I did right in that 5-year journey of having my first business. But man, we built a fucking awesome thing. We had good times. We had bad times. I had hard conversations. We fucking laughed. We cried. We argued. We got shit done. And it was an amazing fucking thing. Unfortunately, through the growth of the company, you just like in a personal relationship, you can outgrow one another. That's what happened in my business relationship. And because I was so naive and so trusting and so ignorant, not stupid, ignorant, I just had a lack of knowledge. I didn't involve myself in the areas of the business that I needed to be involving myself in. My focus was my team and operations, and we were a fucking monster to reckon with. Like, even every fucking day there was something that was wrong. We still were setting a new standard in the market. We were creating new experiences for the clients. And we had bought a company out, owner financed, bought a company out on kind of an assets that was doing around $300,000 a year. And in 3 years, we were doing $2 million. And, so we 7x'd the revenue of this company by doing the things that I was learning how to do, how to hire, the experience that we create for our clients. Okay, how can we systemize this? And I was very involved with EntreLeadership at that time. I really got involved with reading books by people like Simon Sinek, John Maxwell. A lot of these people that I discovered early on in my development, my leadership development. And I would read, and then I would kind of shape it to me, and I would apply it. We would evaluate. There's so much shit that we did wrong that's comical, that we didn't get right. But it was about trying something until you found that right combination that unlocked, growth in the business, that unlocked the culture, unlocked the leadership abilities and skills in me. But things happen. And because I was immature and naive and ignorant, greed started to take over, manipulation started to take over. Nepotism came in, and there were different standards set for those individuals than there were for the team that I had built. And then the conversations got harder, the conversations got less and less. And eventually the February 28th, 2018 was the last day that I left that building, that I left that office, and that I had left my team. And my youngest brother was a part of that team, by the way, when I quit. And that was probably one of the hardest days of my life. Top 5. I can't put a exact number on it, but I know it was one of the hardest days of my life, because I was walking away from my dream, and I was walking away from something that I had built, and I was walking away from my responsibility as a leader for these people. I was responsible for their livelihoods, and we had a great thing going. And we had created a lot of toxicity in the last year or so that I was there, of trying to deal with this bullshit because I was neglecting my team. Before I was fortunate enough to discover that podcast that day, excuse me, through that entire work journey that I shared with you, starting at age 3, not one time and not one person ever said the word leader. No one talked like that. It was this old, dusty, fucked up method of management that would get rinsed and run through generation after generation. And not one person taught me that. Not one person ever said the word leader. Now, I come from a long line of hardworking motherfuckers. That's one thing that my family does not lack in is hard work. I discovered that there were a lot more pieces to a successful equation than hard work. And when I started discovering terms like leadership, accountability, communication, teamwork, what is basically built into the 6 laws as we know and as I teach them today, I started to discover how little I knew and how little I had really been taught. And through my journey of massive failure, I left the HVAC company in a completely depressed state, not sure what the fuck I wanted to do. So I decided to start a handyman business where I just unloaded all of my cash in the startup and then didn't pour my heart into it. Was just doing work for money, to be honest. I didn't implement any of the principles that I had learned. No, I wouldn't say any of them, but a lot of them. I was also immature in the financial state of the business because I had never been exposed to that side. So there was a lot of things for me to learn there. And 2019, I moved to Nevada. My wife at the time and we moved to Nevada in October of 2019 for a couple of reasons. One, I just needed to get the fuck away from there. I knew when I was about 10 years old, I didn't want to be there anymore. And I needed to get away because everything there I felt was holding me back. And I wanted a fresh start. I wanted a clean slate. We had vacationed out here in the year of 2017 to see my brother, Matt. That's when he had him and Nate had their welding business. And I just fell in love with the place and something was drawing me out here. And in October of 2019, we made the move out here, and that in itself has been a tremendous roller coaster of lessons and hardships, the divorce. And, now I'm sitting here. We launched this podcast January of 2020. Today's date is August 24th of 2023. And all of that long story, God, if you're still with me, you are a true fan. You are a trooper. All of that is for me to answer the question as to why I'm here. Why did I choose this profession? It would be easy for me to set on this microphone on top of a multi-million-dollar empire. And easy is probably not the right word, but I could have not started the podcast and I could have went back into business and rebuilt and started over and implemented these things. And in 20 years from now, I could start the Tradesman Experience and I could share with you my past of greatness and success. I could share with you my past of all of these millions of dollars that we've made. And I didn't want to take that path. Everybody that I listen to, Bedros Keuilian, who, if you like this show, I know you'll like his show. Bedros, he's probably my favorite podcaster right now that I'm listening to. I've been a fan of Jocko since day one, the EntreLeadership series, which I don't really listen to them anymore, but they will always have a place in my heart for getting me here. I didn't want to wait 20 years to bring you the messages that I'm bringing you. Instead, I wanted to walk on this journey next to you. I did not want to stand on this mountain of success and shout down all of the things that you need to be doing. It's very difficult to get on here and try to share things that allow you to win when I come from failure. I have far more failure in my life. I have nothing great and tremendous of success to show you from my past. I have more failure to show you. And I try to turn that into value. why I'm here is I do not want you to experience the same things that I did the same way. I want you to be proud of what you do. And that was another battle that I had for so long, is I was not proud to be a tradesman. I wasn't proud to put on steel-toed boots. I wasn't proud to wear a tool belt. When I made that shift and recognized that you have to be a fucking warrior to work in the trade successfully every day. You have to be a fucking monster to work in the trades and success every day. The discipline that it takes, the control that it takes, the emotional maturity that it takes to be successful in the trades takes it a very elite type of person. And when I recognized that, and that became my narrative, and that became my drive, it fucking changed everything for me. That's also one of the reasons why I'm here. You should be fucking proud. You should have complete ownership in what you do. You should work to raise the standard. You should work to fucking learn something new every day. You should implement discipline in your life that allows you to create rungs of success. But why I'm here is I will always be a fucking tradesman. I've been one since I was a baby, and I will always be one. Do I get to wear the tools every day? No. So I'm probably a better representation of the trades as an actual working tradesman anymore. But I want to share everything that allowed me to taste success with the HVAC company. I want to share everything that I learned, good and bad, through these last, I can go all the way back to, 2002. I can go all the way back to 1995 when I started officially working in the skilled trades. So I want to take that, 30 years of experience of right and wrong and growth and success and failure. And I wanted to be able to put it into a conduit that resonates with my people, that resonates with people that speak my language, but also people that want to grow and be successful. I'm here to work with you to elevate you to become more successful. And I'll start to close out with this. I was on the phone yesterday with a newer client, and in 4 months, he has completely transformed. He went from owning a job to being a business owner. His mindset about his business has changed. His relationship about his business has changed. The finances in his business have changed. The quality of service that he provides to his clients have changed. The experience that he provides has changed. And he's actually working less hours, making more money doing that, because he was humble enough to step outside and go, I need help. There's got to be a better way to do this. I either need to change or I'm going to give up. And so many clients that I work with are really kind of standing at that fork in the road of change or give up, improve or give up, learn or give up, become a leader or give up, become accountable or give up. And it's a tough place to be. And so many of us, and this was this was my day for so many years in a row. We get up and we drive to a job we hate. We work for a boss that doesn't respect us and doesn't value us and we don't like. We work in a company that has a toxic culture that's all about greed, backstabbing, lies, gossip, and deceit and manipulation. And we put ourselves through that washboard every fucking day. And ultimately, my last point is why I'm here is I'm here to change that. I'm here to set a new standard for the skilled trades. I'm here to spread a better message for the skilled trades, because we have a responsibility to attract new people. We have a responsibility to rewrite the narrative of the skilled trades. And we have a responsibility to do that by redeveloping ourselves. You want to change your business, you have to change yourself. If you want to change your family, you have to change yourself. If you want to change your financial status, you have to change yourself. Do work that matters. Be excellent in everything that you attempt to do and fucking get shit done. Guys, thanks for spending this time with me. You can find me on Instagram at The Tradesman Experience. Email is thetradesmanexperience@gmail.com, and the website is thetradesmanexperience.com. Again, guys, thank you for constantly supporting us, continuing to support and allowing us to grow, representing the trades as they should be represented. I love you guys. I appreciate you guys. Until next time, get shit done. See ya.